right, so we've heard now the prosecution's closings, and we just heard the defense wrap up. Basically, just to highlight what the defense did, they were pointing to the other DNA that was on the scene. They were talking about the foreign female DNA under Brandy's fingernails. They talked about the male DNA found on a shovel, on a wallet. And then, of course, they brought up Angel Avila Quinones, who is being roped into this as being one of the people involved in this cartel-esque type of killing of these people. So that's what the defense did. We just heard a bit of the prosecution here. I'm going to bring my guest in right now, Dina Dahl, trial mediator. Dina, thanks for being with us today.
You're welcome.
So talk a little bit about what you've heard so far from the defense. I know it wasn't much, but you know the gist here, and compared that to the prosecution's closings.
Yeah, we saw the defense look like he was trying to explain away what happened earlier when the defendant kind of argued back with the judge, which is a big no-no that doesn't make him look good in front of the jury. But I think that the fact that the prosecution wasn't claiming that this was a crime in heat of the passion, that his frustration towards the judge probably didn't hurt him as much. If the prosecution had been claiming all along that this crime was committed in the heat of the moment because he had a bad temper, then him showing the temper toward the judge, I think, would have been much more significant.
Do you think the prosecution missed the mark on highlighting anything? I know you mentioned maybe talking about the passion and all of that, but do you think they could have done anything better?
You know, I thought it was interesting in that clip that we saw, they mentioned how it was, if he was premeditated toward Brandy, then that meant he was premeditated toward the rest of them. But I thought that all along they had really tried to say that the real target of this crime was his son because of this, because of the child support issue, not Brandy. So I don't know if they are pivoting because they realized that there were so many holes poked in this child support pavement. But why highlight now that the kind of main target was Brandy herself?
Right, and along with the child support thing, they also brought up the paternity issue here, which is actually the next part we're going to play for you. But the prosecution was saying that Segura didn't think that this was his child. Let's listen. All right, so more from the prosecution in their closing arguments, talking about that issue of paternity, which we obviously know from this trial that they did confirm that Gervonta is Henry Segura's son. So that's another part of this that's interesting to me. Dina, what do you think we're going to expect now in the rebuttal that the prosecution is going to come back and try to knock the defense down with?
Well, if I were on the defense, what I would say is why wouldn't he have waited for the petition process to go through before committing this huge offense? It sounds like he just filed a petition 4 months ago. The prosecution doesn't say if there was any ruling on that.
Right, completely. Okay. All right. So you hear the prosecutor there talking about Segura and how he was, he lied to law enforcement, how he was having an affair, how he's not necessarily the most honest guy here, right? Dina, weigh in on this. What do you think they were trying to get across by this? And do you think that they did a good job of it? Because the defense admits that Segura is not an upstanding citizen. They even said that in their closing arguments. So is the prosecution also highlighting it, doing anything for them?
You know, this crime is so vicious that if I were on the jury, I would want somebody to be held accountable for this. So I'm looking to see if there's any evidence that this defendant did it, because if he did do it, I don't want to let him off the hook. I think that this was actually the prosecution's kind of strongest argument. It's still maybe not strong enough to actually convict him because, like you said, we know he's a serial liar. That's actually his best defense in this case, is like, I'm a serial liar. Sure, I lie to police, but I lie to everybody all the time. But it is true, he did lie to police, and that does make him look suspicious. And I thought they did a good job at summarizing that for the jury.
Right. And then they go on to bring in James Carlos Santos, who we've heard about through this trial because he was a man who allegedly confessed to ordering these murders from federal prison. And he said that he brought Brandy Peters into this drug trafficking world. He said that, he was the one that said she needs to go because he had learned that she was skimming about $90,000 from her loads. So he goes on. He was, again, the one who said he made a confession that he was responsible for ordering these. They go on to talk about him as being unreliable as a witness. Let's listen to that. All right. So Santos on the stand there. That was him during a direct examination, I believe. We haven't talked about this yet, Dina. This was a main part of this trial, this testimony from Santos. And a lot of people have problems believing if he was credible or not, because what he's claiming is obviously a big claim that could be a big crux of the outcome here. Do you find him credible?
This seems to be almost a case within a case. There is so much to unpack with this allegation that she was part of the drug cartel. I thought he seemed, plausibly credible on the stand. He was a pretty good witness. He seemed consistent with his story, whether or not the story was true or not. He was consistent with it. One piece of evidence that I actually think bolsters this the most was the letter that he wrote to Brandy Peters. And I don't know if that actually was admitted at trial as evidence, but it shows that he wasn't just claiming an association with her after the fact. He did actually write her a letter before she was killed. And if it wasn't admitted in this trial, it would definitely be something any defense attorney would include on an appeal.
Right. And we know that, he's already in federal prison at this point. So he's not getting immunity for his testimony. He's testifying for the defense here. So if it's not true, why would he even bother to go to why would he do all this?
Exactly. And again, the defense doesn't actually have to prove that he did this murder. The defense just has to create reasonable doubt here. Carlos Santos is not on trial for murder by the defense attorney. I think this case within a case has so much with it, not only his testimony, but this partial DNA by his associate, this letter that he wrote her, that I think it creates reasonable doubt, even if the defense hasn't completely closed the circle on it.
All right, Dina Dahl, thank you so much. We got to take a break right now on Law and Crime. Stay with us. We'll be back after this.